Hey guys, it's Noe. I am actually in my office at work and thought I would try to do a quick video on my lunch break, and really wanted to be able to talk about what's been going on kind of in the adoption world. So I mean, you all know that I'm a Korean adoptee, so adopted from Korea. There is a large number of adoptees from Korea living in the US, but also throughout the world. Over 200,000 of us, but that number actually seems kind of low, so I don't know. But recently there has been news about an adoptee out of Oregon who is being deported. So his story is so tragic and just awful, like all the ways that he's been screwed throughout his life by the system, collectively speaking. But anyway, so he was given up. He was adopted when he was 3. Went through a very abusive family, just had a terrible childhood, got involved in some trouble with the law and stuff like that. So he's kind of, you know, he's had issues along the way. But his parents never bothered to naturalize him. So I think now how it is that when you adopt a child from another country, that part of that process is they automatically then become a citizen or become naturalized or whatever. However, back in the 50s through the 80s and even 90s probably, that was not part of the process. So the adoptive parents had to go through the extra step to naturalize their children. So I am naturalized. I have my certificate of naturalization. I remember going and having it done when I was, I think, 7. No, I was 5. It was in 1987 and I was 5. So I remember going through that. So that was like a big special day. Like I'm legit. But his parents never bothered to do that for him. And that has kind of what's led to this point now. So he's been going back and fighting court battles, and he's married. He has 3 kids, and it's awful. So the court denied his request to stay in the US, and he is going to be deported back to South Korea. Now, mind you, he hasn't lived there since 3 years old. He knows nothing. He doesn't know the language. He doesn't know the culture. Like, he's an American, right? So he's now expected to go back. I'm not exactly sure when he's actually being deported and being sent back, per se. But, you know, there's a story out of the New York Times, and his name is Adam Krapser. So if you're wanting to look into the story or learn more about it, that's his name. And the New York Times did a story about his mom. So his mom has actually been located, and her story is very tragic. And it just, I don't know, it just leads to the additional frustration that I have. And so, like, I mean, yes, I am happy that I grew up here and that I was afforded the opportunities that I've had. And had that not happened, I wouldn't have Herschel. There would be no Hersh Noe. There would not be our 3 beautiful girls. But going deeper than that, going beyond that, like, I just have so much frustration about adoption in general, like international adoption. And I think I've kind of alluded to this in previous videos, but I just, you know, Herschel has talked about, like, he would love to live in Korea. I'm just not feeling it. One, because I watch all these videos about how hard it is for foreigners to really make it. Like, sorry, my phone is shaky. Like the deposits for finding a place to live, the, what do they call it? The key deposits or something like that. Like, it just seems like you have to jump through so many hoops to get housing, and maybe it's like that for the locals too. But then finding a job that's not teaching English is like nigh on to impossible, it seems, unless you want to start your own business, but then there lies issues with that too. So we watch My Neighbor Charles, which is I think done through KBS, but you can watch it on YouTube. And so it chronicles like foreigners that live in Korea, and most of the time, excuse me, they're married to a Korean national, and so it highlights like their family and their struggles and all of that stuff. So I'm just not too keen on like living there, and because I'm like, I'm gonna be seen as an outsider because they're gonna know I'm not a Korean national. But then there's also the side of they're gonna expect me to know the language, to understand it, to be able to communicate, and like I just don't want to put myself through that. And then the other piece is like, I don't necessarily want to go back to a country that rejected me in the first place. Because of the way that they set themselves up, like I really feel like international adoption, my personal belief, and I never sugarcoat my thoughts around adoption or thoughts around my experience. I get that not everybody agrees with how my views are. I get that your experience may be different, but I own my experience. This is my experience. This is my opinion and my viewpoint. So before anybody comments and goes crazy on me about like, oh, I should be grateful and all that BS, like this is my lived experience, and so these are my lived thoughts. So please allow me to own those. But anyway, I consider adoption a form of legal trafficking, because essentially you're providing a good and in exchange for money. And it's a lot of money. Like it's not a small amount. Like, you know, like when you give up a pet, like you have to give a rehoming fee, but it's a significant, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that are poured into this. But that money, where does that money go? The government? I don't think it really goes to the agencies. I know it doesn't go to the care of the other orphans. So yeah, I look at international adoption as a form of human trafficking, a legal form of human trafficking. Because these kids, we were taken against our will, taken and put into situations. And I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I would say if you ask a lot of adoptees, if they had the choice, would they have been adopted? And I'm guessing probably half, because there are some that have had really positive experiences. Maybe more than half would say that no. Because I would have rather grown up in a place where, as homogenous as it might have been, I wouldn't have been an outsider. I wouldn't have looked different. I wouldn't have had to learn a different language. I wouldn't have had to have lost so much in my life and experienced so much grief and loss at such an early age, then I wouldn't necessarily be the same person that I am. I wouldn't be as cynical or sarcastic or kind of jaded as I am. I probably would not be dealing with anxiety and depression like I have dealt with throughout my life. I would have rather have stayed in Korea, even if that meant me being poor. Now again, I'm not trying to say like I wish I didn't have all these opportunities, that kind of thing, because what's done is done, right? But it just is awful to me to think that the government, the Korean government, made so much money off of exporting its children. And they didn't have to, but because of the way the social norms, the culture, the society has been set up, that like there's no services for these women to have children. A lot of times it wasn't necessarily unwed mothers that had to give up their children. It was women that were with their husband, but they couldn't afford to keep a kid because there wasn't really social services. So there's just a lot of so much frustration that I have around the topic. And this whole deportation thing is asinine, truly asinine. Like, I just can't imagine. And he's married with 3 kids. Like, I don't know what his wife and his 3 kids, are they able to go to Korea too? Are they gonna have to stay here? Are they gonna have to go someplace else? Because I think she's Vietnamese or something. But like, you're just perpetuating tearing another family apart. And why? Like, seriously, why? So I think I had said, like, there's a silver lining, sort of, to his story, in that his mother, his birth mother, was located. But her story was so tragic, and the experiences that she's been through, although she's had 7 kids, she gave up 1 son to a childless family, and this was like back in the 70s. Then she gave up Adam and her other daughter. Then she remarried. She took care of her husband's 2 kids. Then she went on to have 4 more daughters of her own, and then moved in with some guy and helped take care of his kids. So I don't know, maybe that's her conscious of like trying to compensate, I guess. So I'm not trying to talk ill of her, but she's had a very tragic life. She had acupuncture that went wrong, and so she was crippled basically for the rest of her life. She's been in abusive relationships and stuff, and like, she was devastated when she found out like the horrible life that Adam was living here, because she thought like, well, I sent my kids to an orphanage so they can have better opportunities. And I think there's a quote in the article that she says, had I known that his life would have been like this, I would have kept him and we would have starved together. That's so sad. That's so tragic. Like, it's so maddening that she felt like she had no other option, but she had to give her kid up. And I feel like so many of us went through these difficult childhoods and difficult upbringings, that if our parents really knew what the situations were like how does that make them feel? Because it's not like they feel good about the decision of giving us up, but it just compounds the issues surrounding adoption. And you know, there's a lot of shame and everything attached to this. But if the government would just get off their ass, and do something about it, and put forth some social measures, and it not be so stigmatized, then we all wouldn't have had to have been sent away as unwanted goods from our birth country, which is kind of how I feel. So my emotions relating to Korea are mixed. Yes, I want to go there. I want to visit. I want to see what it feels like to be there. Like, does it feel like home to me? Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel familiar? Does that conjure anything up for me? But I also want my girls to see it. My girls know that I'm adopted. They know that my family is white, but they don't really understand it yet at this point. So, it's gonna be a while before I really talk to them about what that has meant. But I don't know, I just am I'm so sad, like, and mad about the situation with Adam, because his life has never been a quality of life that any of us would want, right? And he was sent away when he was 3. So I look at I look at Zara, who is 3.5, and like, all the cognitions that she has and all of the skills and everything that she has in the English language, and like, if we were just like, sorry, we gotta send you away, like, yeah, that would be devastating. Like, just, and he's had nothing but devastation after devastation after devastation. So there is something you can do. You can, if you go to the articles that talk about Adam Crapser, you can write to your legislators and let them know. And I think there's some petitions and stuff that you can sign as well. So if you're interested in learning more about it, I might also try to include a link to the article. But I feel like this was a lot of rambling. But I also feel like I haven't talked a lot about adoption. I definitely have a lot more to discuss and talk about in future videos, but I just really wanted to be able to get that out and just, I'm sorry, Adam, and for all of the other adoptees who have gone through things like this, like, I'm sorry that we've had to go through this. I'm sorry that you're continuing to have to go through this, and that you got really rotten adoptive parents. And that just sucks, and that's really where I'm at right now. So If any of my views offended you, sorry, but again, I own my views and I don't allow anybody to not allow me to own my views, if that makes sense. There will be more videos in a future date, but for now, that's all I got. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.